who will be with us for the whole tour. نرد نصلي ونيدو غمريه تعطيش دي أوبريس بسطان السيد هذا سبيتو سنتون سليم عليك ماليا بيغاسي من لير سيوميك بكين تبص ليسا ومديرك الفروتا الجوستيكس Maria Santis ma li tħad fid-dinja minn aktar waħda nagrazzja ma ħolġu minna.
No, sorry, this is a private tour.
Okay.
You can close it.
Yeah, we can start as well. Yes.
We've got 48 on board. 48 including me and George. Yes. I need your tube. Yep. Okay.
Signora, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the home of the Viking Kings. My name is Peter, and as George has explained, I'll be with you for the next 5 hours, for better or for worse, and we shall cast off in just a moment. I am required to point out the safety features of this vessel for you, and in the unlikely event of an accident and you need to escape, via the windows there are side hammers on the panels. We also have a small first aid kit and a fire extinguisher. In Norway it is essential to wear seat belts on public transport, otherwise you will be required to make a 1,500 krona donation to the very wealthy oil fund, and maybe a couple of drinks on board is much better spent of that money. Okay, as we start off, I'm going to tell you where we are for the first 10 minutes, and then I'll explain the nature of today's tour and our stops, etc., etc. So I just need now to check that we do have 48 enthusiastic people on board, so please bear with me.
Sometimes.
Morning. Buenos dias. You are from Spain?
No, Malta.
Oh, Malta. Okay.
What type?
Oh, so you speak
Maltese.
Oh, okay. So I was thinking maybe it's Spanish.
No. We speak our own language.
Oh, I see.
And we are proud.
Small country, Malta.
Very small.
How many people live there?
500,000.
500,000.
Too much.
Oh, and you have now a lot
3
of.
years ago we were 400.
Now you have a lot of immigrants from Africa,
And Italy.
and it's dangerous, no, or not? No.
We are still safe. But
No crime increasing. Crime.
not that much.
No.
Lucky.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're having difficulty with the seatbelt, I suggest that you raise your sidearm, then connect the belt. It's easier. Are we all okay? All strapped in? All strapped in? Silence. The A's have it. Okay. Okay, let's get going.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently on the island of Risoi. This is part of the territory of Haugesund, and we're going up towards a large shed which happens to be a working terminal dry dock for heavy marine engineering. This is owned by a company called Able. It started life in 1901 as the Haugesund Mechanical Works, and they do heavy work on the manufacture, supply, maintenance of the oil rigs and platforms that end up in the North Sea. They also do work in recent years on wind turbines that will be also floating in the North Sea. They employ about 1,400 people, and some rent these old houses you can see ahead of you here on Risoi. The first of these was built way back in 1875. Able is owned 50% by a group of Norwegian investors and 50% by the Swedish government for its pension fund. So ownership pedigree is second to none. It's a benevolent employer and certainly part of the economic generator. As we go along here and past the Able offices on the right, we will now turn over Risoi Bridge. The bridge was constructed way back in 1939, and before then there was an oarsman who rowed his little wooden boat from the mainland across to this little island of Risoi. He did that for 40 years, and there's a statue to commemorate him on the right below the bridge. We cannot see that. As we get to the top, the apex here, 100 metres ahead, you'll get a wonderful view of the waterfront both sides. On the right hand side we have one of our major hotels, that's the Maritime, and on the left hand side you'll see a series of different coloured verandas. That is our restaurant nightclub strip, and of course very, very popular during the warmer weather. Haugesund does have some warmer weather at times, and of course very popular of a weekend. Now you will see, you can look back over Risoi to the left, and these old buildings in the, next to the water were the old herring warehouses that have now been modified. You can tell them by the triangular arch at the top of the building. And we now come into the main centre of Haugesund. Haugesund is laid out on a rectangle, so we have our usual amount of one-way streets. We have our usual complement of one-way streets. And this next one we're coming to is very important. This is known as Harold Street. This is the one we're about to cross now. And this is the longest pedestrian walkway in the whole of Norway. That was disputed, so it was measured. It's our main shopping street. It was found to be, it was 535.5 metres long, and hence won that wonderful title. We're going to turn right here.
Right here.
Yeah,
okay.
And pass another of our hotels. This is the Saga, another major hotel in Haugesund. Now all along here are the old buildings going back to the early 1900s that have been converted. This is all retail commercial, very little residential in this area. And on the left, this building with the aluminium frame happens to be, of all things, a car park. Now we're going to turn left here.
Yes.
And this is our famous Town Hall Square with the pink Town Hall building. In 1921, a wealthy ship owner donated 1 million kroner for this building. And then in 1947, his then widow, she donated another 1 million kroner, and that was for the construction of the park in front of the town hall. As we turn around to the right, you'll see it. And this is a very important area for people from Haugesund. This is where we start our Constitution Day processions. and we have our festivities. This is really the heart and soul of the area of Haugesund. This is one of our straight ahead, one of our university colleges. Straight ahead, and on the right is our hospital complex. We're coming to an orange building on the left. You can see it now. This is now a kindergarten, but during the dark ages of the Nazi occupation, that was a Gestapo headquarters with the torture chamber underneath.
Moira?
Yes, I
Today is a kindergarten. You'll be pleased to know that in Norway, no torture is practiced in kindergartens anymore. Our hospital is being expanded at the moment. It serves a population of Haugesund, that's 37,500 people. And also the next major municipality, island of Karmøy, that's 42,000 people. So this hospital has a catchment area of some 80,000 people and is being expanded. In Norway we do have very, very benevolent social security services. We have free hospitalisation and we have free education. We also have many other things that are free, but of course we pay highly for them by way of high taxes. Norway has a VAT or moms of 25%, except for food, which is only 15%. Norway is an expensive country, there is little doubt about that. But at the moment the exchange rate is weak. We are now on our north-south spine. Ahead of us is the city of Stavanger. Behind us is the city of Bergen. And we go along here for a little bit, and then we will turn left into our highway, which we call E134. You'll see the signs of it a few blocks ahead of us. this is the beginning of this our highway, E134. It starts behind Haugesund and goes all the way to the outskirts of Oslo, some 440 kilometres. But it's a slow journey because it goes through the mountain tunnels, etc. It generally takes about 7 hours in good weather. And as we now go through the outer part of Haugesund, I can return to our program for the day and explain the instructions that I've been given, and I hope they're the same as your understanding. Our first stop is going to be the magnificent waterfall of Langfoss, and it is truly, it's a majestic slab of fast-flowing water. There we shall have a photo stop of some 15 to 20 minutes. After that we go for about 5 minutes further inland, and we come to one of the local farms. We cannot go into the farm property, we can go into the roadway the first 10 or so, 20 metres, again for photographic stop. This is only a 5 to 10 minute stop to give you an opportunity to take photos of the waterfall from a different angle. We then turn around and come back towards Haugesund, but after about 20 minutes we stop at a place called 12jul23. I shall point this out on the forward journey where that is. But it is important because it has a small mini market, it has a restaurant, and it has toilets. We will be stopping there again for about 20 minutes or approximately, just to give you a chance to stretch the legs, take photos, toilet stop, and at the supermarket you might like to buy a sandwich or a drink or something such as that to enjoy on the return trip. I'll point out the details of these places when we get there. I'm giving you the overview. On our way back to Haugesund, we are programmed to go to the Viking Monument. That's at 4:30. We need to be at the Viking Monument, and again, this is a 15-minute stop for photographs only. Then we get you back to the pier by 5 p.m. So overall, there is only one toilet stop, and that is at this supermarket facility and toilets, which we're scheduled to be there at 2:30. There is, however, an emergency toilet on board the bus should you need it. Ladies and gentlemen, your itinerary is very tight. You are packing in a lot today, and I'm going to do my very, very best to make sure we achieve it all. But I cannot predict any delays if there are roadworks or tunnel might be closed. We could have some minor delays, 5-10 minutes. Now, if that's the case, we will still go to each of these places that have been promised to you, but we might need to reduce our stopping time for 5 minutes here or 5 minutes there. This is very much a judgment situation on how long it takes us to get to our destination. We're going some 90 kilometres, almost 100 kilometres inland from Haugesund. We cannot predict the traffic, cannot predict the weather either. So that we have to have some flexibility. Your itinerary does not have a lot of flexibility of time built into it, but we'll do our best to go everywhere. That's important. What also is important is that you simply get yourselves comfortable and you enjoy this lovely tour. This one is regarded as the best of all possible tours from the ship arrivals in Haugesund. And you'll be seeing some small farms, some small fjords, you'll see just a few animals, you'll see lots of wonderful Norwegian scenery. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the important thing of the weathercast. The weather forecast, earlier this morning, I made a telephone to the Norwegian weather gods, but they were very busy, and in the voicemail queue they came on and they said, "Sorry, we are busy, call back later." Bang. So I then have to resort to other means of finding out what might happen this afternoon. Rain, light rain is predicted until about now. It will be overcast from now until 5 o'clock, and then light rain starts again after 5 o'clock. So fingers crossed that we don't have rain on this tour. We might get a few drops, that's okay. But it's so much better if it's not wet when you get out for photos and what have you. Ladies and gentlemen, whenever we talk about weather in Norway and what might happen to the weather, we always add a very important word to the end of our predictions. And that important word is maybe. So on days like today, Norwegians always take umbrellas. So just sit back, relax. If the cabin temperature is too hot, too cold, please yell out, and we can adjust that from the front. And this tour is a photographer's paradise. Also, during the course of the next few hours, if you have any questions about this tour, or Haugesund, or Norway in general, please feel very comfortable asking me. I'll answer them to the best of my abilities for you.
الدورون
Too hot?
تحط الفلابس مال right? It's too cold. It's too hot.
Too hot, okay.
Okay, can we have a bit
Yes.
cooler?
I go to 19 degrees.
A little bit cooler halfway.
Go to 5 degrees.
Both sides?
I can go to 18.
No problem.
That's the minimum.
Okay.
Maximum air is 18. Yes, you have to put on your jacket.
Your ski coat.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. Yep. B134, that's it. Flop. This will be the first time in Norway for many of you. It's a very pretty country. Oh, okay.
Oh, because we've been to very good. Like the sea came back to Holden yesterday.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yesterday.
Yeah. You've seen the nice fjords.
But Gerenger yesterday was very foggy and very cloudy.
Yeah.
The clouds nearly were touching above the ship. So when we get vehicles home, there will be good sea.
Ah,
So you went to Briksdal.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's nice.
But then we went to the
Oh yeah. On the all the way on the top.
Yes, but the road was very dangerous.
Yeah. And the view, it was okay. It wasn't cloudy.
When we went on the lake, it was perfect.
Yeah, the road is very zigzag.
Yes, and it was very foggy.
You went this Trollstigen?
Holden.
Olden, yes.
Yeah.
That was on the lake.
Loen, the skylift.
No.
No.
That's in Bergen, this side. The Folimola. That was his That's me.
On our right is one of our smaller fjords. This tour will see, as we go along on the right hand side, we'll see a number of these small fjords, and then when we get closer to our destination, on the left hand side we'll see some larger fjords, and ultimately Orkra Fjord. I should explain also why we call it that. The Norwegians are rather independent people in some respects, and they looked at the standard alphabet and thought this was simply not good enough. So they decided to add 3 more characters of their own. And they came to the first vowel A, and they thought it looked rather ugly, so they decorated it with a little hat on top, a little circle. So that was the first extra Norwegian character to the alphabet. They come further along to the E, and they thought that it looked very, very lonely. So they mated it with an A, and now we have in Norwegian an A and an E with a common spine. Then they went further along the vowels and they came to O and thought it looks most unattractive, so they decided to put a diagonal stroke through the O. What is the effect of these three characters? Ladies and gentlemen, it is very simple. It is to do with pronunciation only. For example, where we're going today starts with an A and a circle above it. Reading it in English, you would read it as Akrafjord, but that little circle over the A in Norwegian converts the A in English to an OR in Norwegian. The effect of these three characters is to lengthen the pronunciation of those three syllables. That's all. Hence, I refer to it today as Akrafjord and not Akrafjord, simply because of this lengthening of the vowel in Norwegian pronunciation. It's not complex. It's simple when it's been explained to you, I suppose. Confusing otherwise. You would have seen much tourist material using these characters of the O with the stroke through it. And the other simple thing is at the end of a word where you see O and a stroke on Y, the last two letters, that simply translates into island. So I said today we start in Risoy, that is Reese Island. It has the O with a stroke and a Y at the end of it. That's the end of today's Norwegian language lesson, ladies and gentlemen. This farmhouse on the right has two large concrete cylinders you'll see in the farm buildings. They were originally used for the storage of the grain. Today they are used for grain storage and commonly the farm machinery as well. You'll see quite a few of these, particularly in the small older farms as we go along today, both sides of the coach, you'll be able to see them. There might still be some bales of hay wrapped up in white heavy plastic waiting to be collected. When I was here last week, there were a few of them. Oh, here are some right now on the left. They will eventually be stored for food during the winter months, of course. Norway is really lush and green after the spring rains, and we have had a little bit of a summer. Of course, when the needle gets up to 25 degrees centigrade, Norwegians declare that a heat wave. But past week we have had some delightful summer weather, that is summer Norwegian style weather. And the long beautiful evenings, we can sit out on the balcony until midnight, enjoy another extra wine with the barbecue, etc., particularly at this time of the year. Now we're coming to an interesting part of this fjord. We'll be passing an area, the fjord on the right, it's known as Vindefjord, the name doesn't matter to you. But in a moment we'll see a stretch of water that is unique for the fjords in this part of western Norway. It is unique because many years ago, after some successive, very nasty, cold, wet winters, the water next to the roadway, or close to the roadway, just out to about the 2 o'clock position. Many years ago, this part of the fjord, only this part, used to freeze up. Well, then the locals decided that they should do something about this. So they cut the frozen ice into big chunks, and they would be floated around via the fjord system to Haugesund. Why? Because the ice chunks were used to keep the vast herring catch fresh. It was used for that. Now this goes back many years ago, and these are the waters right on our right. This was before the cumulative effect of climate change started to kick in. It will never happen again because we have global warming. And the global warming is of grave concern to Norway, not because there's no ice on the fjords, but there are much wider issues about that. And I might, if there's time, I could explain that to you on the way back. And hence the name given to that little part of the fjord that we've just passed is simply Isvik. Is in Norwegian translates to ice, and Vik, V-I-K, means inlet. It was the ice inlet of the fjord many years ago. In western Norway, forgive me if it has been explained to you, but there were 2 significant waves of herring. It started way back in the 1800s, and surprisingly the herring came closer to shore seeking food, and millions of them, and this started a fishing wave that lasted for some 60 years. Now in the 1800s there were no restrictions, and after approximately 60 years the herring catch was fished out. The herring stopped coming, and then that brings us to the end of that century, the early 1900s, life was very tough here. Norway was still a very poor country. But early in the 1900s, the herring returned for about another 60 years. But of course, early 1900s was not pleasant times, and then the introduction of World War I, etc. But the arrival of the herring all along the west coast twice, that gave the prosperity to these towns such as Haugesund. Bergen and Stavanger had a massive number of herring canneries during these periods. There are museums to them today. And it is said, therefore, that Haugesund obtained its wealth and prosperity. It is said that Haugesund is constructed on herring bones. first of many pretty valleys that you'll see on both sides of the coach. gentlemen, this is one of two provincial towns we're coming to, one of the two on today's tour. This place is known as Erlen. You'll see the name, and it's got that O with a stroke through it, so it's not Erlen, it's Erlen. And as we come down to the bottom of this hill, you'll see this small township. It has a population of only about 420, 440 people. But it's on the edge of the fjord, and you'll see evidence here where many people live at the water's edge, around the edge of the fjord. Very, very common, of course. You would have seen some of that earlier in the week. So here we have Orlandslorg, this little sort of subsidiary city. And in a moment you'll see some rather large cranes sticking out of the water. They'll be on the left-hand side. This, of course, is known as Erlen Fjord, the water on the left. And this first part of it is very, very deep. There are the cranes and lifts, etc., scaffolding straight ahead of us. They belong to a company called Westcon. That too is a shipyard very similar to Able in Risoy, where we started this morning. They do similar work. They do maintenance on oil rigs and the platforms. Ultimately, they are floated through the fjord system out. Many of them ultimately are sent to Norway's part of the North Sea for the oil and gas. But this company was innovative. This is one of the company's 4 shipyards throughout Norway, and they were one of the first companies to convert the barges and the ferries into electric. They started off, they built a number of hybrid vessels, and they were one of the few Norwegian pioneers in building ferries 100% electric that ply the fjords. Of course, many other, or some other, not many other, some other Norwegian companies followed suit. And hence, there is this move towards electrification on the waterways. There is also a move towards electrification on the roadways. And straight ahead of us, Westcon employs more than the population of Erlandsborg. Where do they come from? The settlement ahead of us. It is known as Erlen, simply Erlen. It's some 4 kilometres ahead of us, and it is the large provincial centre. And if you ever need to question why people would want to live around the edge of the fjord, just have a look ahead of you now. It's absolutely beautiful. You've seen a number of places like this earlier in the week. This is perhaps a little larger than many of those along Sonja Fjord and Alden and places such as that. There's a building on the left we're passing. It has some strange words on it. You can see it now. The first word is Rosemarling. The second strange word is troll, and the third strange word is souvenir. It opens generally for a few hours through the week. When we get through the town, I'll explain the meanings of that to you. Now, as we go through the town, all of these towns have their own churches. This is typical of this area, the church on the right. And you'll see in this town, it has the normal facilities. It has cafes, restaurants, overnight accommodation, hotels, bed and breakfast, supermarkets, etc. It serves the local district of some few thousand people. And it's very popular weekend, in particular, day trippers from Haugesund and elsewhere. And some tend to stay overnight. It's a very pretty little place. Now, I mentioned those three strange words to you. Rosemarling. What is rosemarling? Well, let me translate it from the Norwegian. Rose means exactly the same thing. The flower rose, or the colour rose. Marling means painting. Rose painting. What is it? Well, it is a fashion that was introduced to Norway from Europe because of the influences mainly of the Rococo period. We're going back about 300 years ago of that order. But this influence didn't come to coastal Norway, it came to the centre of Norway. And in the small farms during winter, there's not much work for the farmhands or the wives or the children to do. The animals are generally kept inside, there's no growth of food. The work effort reduces during winter. So some of the people were looking for something to do. And the scrolling effect of Rococo art appealed to them. So they took some rudimentary colours from the farm. They took a brown, which was a deep brown, which could be extracted from the iron implements around the farm. And they took the green from some of the plants and cooked that up to get a deep green, the chlorophyll effect. These were the precursors to modern paint, and they had essentially these two colours. And then they simply did, on pieces of timber, scroll painting, and it was sort of refined a little bit, not loose but firmed up, and it became quite a fashion. So much so that many of the people in the small farms, they travelled towards the coast and introduced this rose painting to other parts of Norway. But some of them managed to get winter jobs by the wealthy farmers to do rose painting on personal goods in the home. For example, cupboards, wardrobes, chairs, storage chests, ladies' dowries, and it then advanced into doing porcelain and on coffee cups. It now is a multicoloured art form, and it is still the small scroll type. So this became fashionable, but after about 120 years it lost its thrust. About 40 years ago it has now come back into some small fashion. You see most of these pieces that have the rose painting now in the antique shops. So it was a fashion that sort of started, died off, and has re-emerged on a small scale, an art fashion, an art form, no more, no less. And the second intriguing word is a troll. Well, it's probably explained to you that you might have been on the lookout for some Norwegian trolls. They're little characters who do dreadful things to upset you. But, truth be known, the trolls come from mythical tales of the old Norwegians. Nobody has ever seen a troll, despite them allegedly living in the mountains and the forests and all sorts of places where they would be difficult to find if they exist. Trolls today are depicted
As
ugly little characters with big noses in the souvenir shops. I still have to meet a troll somewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, as we go down this mountainside, those on the left-hand side of the coach, will soon have a fantastic view of this fjord. This is not Okra Fjord, it's a smaller one known as Etna Fjord. But when we get down just past the tree line and around here, there'll be 2 or 3 opportunities to get this lovely vista. So it's cameras at the ready if you wish. This is another one of Norway's many spectacular views. I'm not referring to the traffic in front of us there.
That's not traffic. It's that's traffic.
Now there are a couple of tree clearances as we go along here for the next kilometre. You'll have 2 or 3 opportunities. Just here, there you are, that looks spectacular. Those on the right hand side will get the good glimpses of that on the way back. There you are again. Now there's Norway's Mother Nature showing herself off for you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming into the second of the provincial centres that I mentioned earlier, and this one is simply called Etna. I mentioned briefly the name of that fjord was Etna Fjord. Now, this village is very, very similar to what we saw in Erlen. Again, it is a large provincial centre, and likewise it has a population of around about 1,500 people, but it serves a district of about 4,500 people. So you'll see the same sorts of facilities, always a church that we're coming to on the right, restaurants, cafes, overnight accommodation and a supermarket. Again, like Erlen, this is a very, very pretty place to come out and just spend an overnight, relax around the fjord, explore the local area, and some of the little, for example, art shops like rose painting. Unfortunately, rose painting is generally not open of a weekend, but that's a business decision, not a tourism facility decision, which I feel that it should be, but I'm not the proprietor. Now, this place is also interesting because of one of its famous characters who was born here at Etna many years ago. I take you back to the year 1115, and in that year there was a fellow born here. His name was Erling Ormson, and Erling grew up to be a clever lad. In fact, like many adults, he became a warrior, of course post-Viking, very much after the Viking phase, and he went off to various crusades, and he was successful in a number of battles, and he came back to Etna, and the local people just thought this was terrific. Erling was their hero. And so in one of his battles against the Moors, Erling sustained a very bad injury, but fortunately he did survive. He received a very bad cut to the side of his neck, and that crunched up a few nerves and pieces of bones and bits and pieces of him. Thus that when by the time that he returned here to Etna, he had a permanent slant in his neck. So instead of the locals calling him by his correct name, Erling Ormson, they gave him the nickname Erling the Slanted, simply because of the slant in his neck. And he took that name to his grave, Erling the Slanted, a famous warrior from Etna. Now you mightn't think that much of a story, and I might be inclined to agree with you, but there is more. Erling grew up also to be a politician and a manipulator. And through a devious set of circumstances, very complex, very messy, and I'm not going to go into any of that, he arranged for his son to be declared King of Norway. Wow. Well, how did this happen is another issue. Let's not touch that. But by the time the son was declared king, son Magnus was all of 8 years old, 08. So that meant that Daddy called the shots. Daddy made the decision. In fact, the term we would give to that would be a regent. Erling acted as regent, and there are many, many proclamations during the reign of Magnus V. He became Magnus V of Norway, and there was one important one. And of course this was through the mouth of his father, Erling the Slanted. The proclamation was that all future kings of Norway would be the eldest sons of the current ruler. This goes back, ladies and gentlemen, to the mid-1100s. And this system was maintained in Norway right up until 1990, when there was a constitutional change, and the provision was then made that it would be the eldest child of the current ruler who would inherit the throne. And that is, of course, what we have in Norway today. You would know this term in English is referred to as primogeniture. Today in Norway we have our King Harald. He is 86 years of age. He hasn't been enjoying good health. He's been in and out of hospital for spark plug changes and a few bits and pieces to be wired up. And when he has not been available, his son, Prince Haakon, has acted as regent, that is, the duties of the king without being the king. The same as Magnus V did for Erling the Slanted. And today it will be Prince Haakon who inherits the throne, and then later on Haakon's eldest child is a daughter, Princess Ingrid. She is now 19 years of age. Last year in Oslo, when she turned 18, there was a big hullabaloo, and of course formal dinners and receptions at the palace, etc., etc. All of the media and the paparazzi all having a ball about Norway's future queen. I don't know how her dad felt about that, but that's not the point. The media had a bonanza. Here are some of the little fishing huts you see along the edge of the water. Right here, this will be good for salmon. There'll be a few salmon along here. I hope on board you've had a chance to sample the Norwegian salmon. Particularly, it wouldn't have been from this area, but the salmon that's farmed from this area has a very, very high reputation in Norway for its quality. And forgive me if it has been explained to you, but half of Norway's export income comes from seafood, and that includes a significant amount of salmon, most of which goes to Japan. Why? The Japanese love it for sushi, and you are well aware that the Japanese standard for sushi is of the highest quality. Norwegian salmon features prominently on Japanese sushi tables. I do encourage you to try it if it has been available on board. I dearly hope so. It's delicious, particularly from this area. I might buy a little packet at the supermarket and take it back home. You, of course, can't take food back to your homes. Today, ladies and gentlemen, you witnessed it from the pier side during your unfortunate waiting time. There are a number of bus tours, and some of them go into this area. It is therefore highly likely that where we stop for our photo shoots and our stretch the leg break, that there will be other coaches. It is of utmost importance that please get back on board this coach. Please get back on board this bus.
Fix the logo on the windscreen, please.
Yeah, we'll put this in the front.
Now, this being Norway's super duper highway, super duper highway to Oslo, as we get into the higher country, the more mountainous country, the road has a few more bends in it, which is by definition required in Norway, and of course it narrows. So super duper is in inverted commas. Again, forgive me if this has been explained to you earlier in your tour, but the geology of the fjords on this western coast of Norway, with these high mountains, all of this was derived from the immense upheaval millions and millions of years ago of the Ice Age, and what ultimately came down all along the coast of Norway were these very, very high mountains, and next to them the very, very deep ravines. And as you know, Norway is very windy and very wet. We get an immense amount of rain here, and we also get a lot of snow and hence a lot of ice. When that melts, then the water and the rain has to go somewhere, and when it falls down into the deep ravines next to the high mountains, that is the most simplistic definition of a fjord. Mountains with a high ravine. And as you know, virtually all of the fjords in Norway are ultimately connected to the sea. So these waters in the fjords out here will have far less salt content than seawater, because the mix occurs all along the west coast of Norway, and the salt content becomes diluted, such that at our ultimate destination of Fjord, we refer to the water there as slightly, we use the term brackish, meaning just has a little bit of sea salt content. When I say all of the fjords are connected, they are not necessarily connected by other fjords. There'll be rivers and streams and mountains, and commonly one fjord runs into the other. It's just the way of Norway's geology, with lots of coastal small islands and lots of little mountains. Now this could be a tree clearing blockage, and we have arrived at the right time. The fellow with the table tennis bat, or the lady with the table tennis bat, has just waved us through. Lady Luck is shining upon us. Well, this fellow is just checking his lottery win from his mobile phone. As the road narrows, we'll soon be getting into what I referred to as tunnel country. We go through 4 or 5 tunnels today. The longest one of them is only about 7.5 kilometres, not so long. This one here is certainly not one of our largest. might be a little bit of haze over Orkney Fjord when we get there, but the waterfall should be behaving itself today for you. Ladies and gentlemen, the few drops of water you see on the windscreen, don't treat them as rain, treat them as the perspiration from the clouds. This tunnel is a little over a kilometre long. And another pretty valley on the right. Ladies and gentlemen, along this part of the roadway midweek, they're doing some tree felling, and they generally close off the road for 5-10 minutes one way and allow traffic to go through, then escort traffic in the opposite direction. So we're lucky we're not delayed here. But of course this could go on all day long and we might strike some delays on the way back. Let's just keep fingers crossed and see what happens. The escort car is ahead of us. left is your first view of Fjord. This is a significant slab of water. It is some 32 kilometres long, and way up there in the middle, its deepest part goes down to 650 metres. It is certainly nowhere near the longest of our fjords in Norway. I understand you've already been to that area where you've seen Fjord. That's over 200 kilometres long, like a mini ocean. But there are plenty of salmon and cod and a few other species down in the fjord. Mullet is another type of fish, but this is the Latin tunnel of 7.5 kilometres, and once we get through it and a couple more tunnels we shall arrive at the waterfall Langfoss. Langfoss you will see from the right hand side of the bus, and the flow of water goes under the roadway into the fjord that we have seen on the left. When we stop and have a look at the fjord, the waterfall, please be careful. The pathways might be a little bit wet and slippery. Please be aware, please be careful. And with a bit of luck we'll be able to stop the bus just a few places once we get past the waterfall, which will be, as I said, on our right. Now we shall have at least a 15-minute break there, perhaps a little bit longer. We'll just see what happens in the next 5 minutes or so. When you get to the waterfall, your valuables will be perfectly safe in the coach. And I suggest you get your cameras ready. Now just be a bit careful, those with large lenses and filters. The wind and the power of the water could cause what we call some spume bouncing off the rocks and make your camera lens or filter a little bit moist. Just be aware of that. Change position away from the flow of any dribbles of moisture. After all, you do need some lovely clear photos. in a moment you'll see a brown building on the left. This is known as Ultrafjord Tunet, and this is where we'll have our toilet break and our stretch the legs break, etc. in there, and that contains the small supermarket as well. So we'll be stopping in this car park. Going about further on to the waterfall will take us around about 10-15 minutes. This tunnel, a little bit shorter, 2.5 kilometres long. There shall be a number of cars and hopefully not too many buses at the car park of the waterfall. There is a small car park on the right hand side, direction in which we're travelling of course, and then on our left now there's a slightly larger car park and a little kiosk. Now what is important is, and this is very important, if you wish to cross the road, and I certainly do not recommend it, but if you wish to do so, you must use the underpass. There are steps on both sides in the car park. You go down and then you go under the roadway. Where we're going, the waterfall is on a bend in the road and the big heavy trucks come past, and we are given an instruction to caution and prevent as best we can any of our visitors crossing the road on the surface of the road. Please go under and avoid any potential mishap. When we get there, you'll realise, when you see it, you'll realise what it is, and I'll point out where the stairs down are, the walkway under the main road. A couple of weeks ago there was a fair bit of snow on these mountains. It would have melted. Now I'm not seeing much at all at the moment. So the snow melt might have finished for the season. But certainly not the waterfall. is a short tunnel, ladies and gentlemen. It's only 3/4 of a kilometre, and a few seconds after we pass this, you'll see the waterfall on the right. The Leng in Norwegian means long, and Foss means fall. The long fall, the long waterfall, that's what it is. Leng Foss. And we'll just have to see which side of the road we can park upon. Have a look at this on the right, ladies and gentlemen. There it is. It's flowing freely through you. There's Norway's majesty.
We park by the right-hand side or do a loop, whichever you can.
We should stop on the right side.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I hope
Yes,
so.
there is a place for the bus.
Okay, okay.
He's buddy.
Yeah, here we can.
I can just park here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll stop on this right-hand side. We need to be back on board the bus by 5 past the hour, please. 5 past the hour.
15 minutes.
Take